Jalen Rose.
What up, though?
I'm David Jacoby.
And on the cool check-in.
Together with Jalen Jacoby, what is it that we do, sir?
We give the people what they want.
The people got what they wanted last night on Monday Night Football. What a game. So many stars in this game, so much action. It started with some dominant defense on both ends. Both defenses had a score, takeaways all over the place, and then Russell Wilson and Jimmy G started to do their thing. Both Jimmy G and Russell Wilson brought their teams down the field at the end of the game to get themselves in the lead. But then it happened, Jalen Rose. This pick in overtime set up this kick, not even close, from McLaughlin, the rookie kicker. And then Russell Wilson got the ball back, did what he does, got him down the field. And then Myers won the game for the Seahawks. There is so much to discuss from this game. What was the biggest takeaway for you, Mr. Rose?
That the guy who made the game-winning kick, his name is Jason Myers. For anybody that grew up in the 80s, okay? Michael Myers and Jason Voorhees, that's classic. We have to investigate his name, right, family?
He had a terrible week last week, too. He was so bad last week, missed like 4 field goals. I felt so good for him. And McLaughlin, the other kicker, had a huge kick. Like, this guy did not have a job like 4 days ago. Robbie Gould was hurt, and he comes in and he puts one straight down the middle at the end of regulation from 47 yards. Basically has the same distance in overtime, and it looked like me out there kicking it. He just shanked it to the left. Just shanked it.
And for me, I've realized my tipping point of what I consider a field goal that a professional should make is like 42 yards.
Okay.
Anything over that, I'm like, oh, okay, I'm not as upset if they miss. But this was a terrific football game, as you mentioned. One undefeated team in the 49ers who eventually lost Sanders due to injury, their wide receiver. Hopefully it's not something long-term. And on the other side, Seattle, who lost Lockett during the game due to injury, who Pete Carroll feels like that's going to be a more serious injury. But it was all about the dynamic play of Russell Wilson, who now leads the league, David Jacoby, in total yards and total touchdowns. And what Pete Carroll continues to do, that's sneaky and smart, while we dazzle at Russell, and it's great how he gets down and uses his baseball background to slide and not take big hits, they still find a way to turn around and get a ball to Carson 25 times to slow down the pass rush when they can, to give Russell a chance to even breathe. So I was really impressed with Metcalf, who continues to improve as a rookie receiver. And so there's a lot of great things happening offensively for Seattle, but we got to see what happens with Lockett, because that'll be a big-time loss, obviously.
Josh Gordon had a couple big third-down conversions, and he just joined the team. And I want to talk about the quarterbacks for a second, Jalen, because if you can celebrate Russell Wilson's play as you just did, but he's the same Russell Wilson that threw an interception in overtime on the 2-yard line, right? And that was a beautiful play by Greenlaw. But then there's also Jimmy G. You could say, oh, well, Jimmy G drove him down the field, put them in a position to win the game with that field goal. But it's the same drive in which he basically threw it off the shoulder pads of 2 different linebackers for the Seahawks. So I walk away from this game with the same impression I had from the beginning. Like, both those quarterbacks did so much to put their team in position to win, but that both those quarterbacks also kind of gave away important chances.
So I ignored it at the top of the show, and you did it twice during your great analysis. We're not going to put Jimmy G's play and Russell Wilson's play in the same category, because Jimmy G also did a lot of unforced turnovers that cost his team. Russell Wilson, I agree with you, made that bad mistake, threw that pick on the 2-yard line. It almost reminded me of the Super Bowl. I was thinking, wow, I remember that play when he threw that pick and cost them the game. But again, special teams, as we started the show alluding, always play that factor in determining a lot of times how we analyze these games. And Garoppolo didn't have Kittle, his security blanket, arguably the best tight end in football. But you got to give Seattle credit because they stood up against the run. And that's what San Francisco does on a consistent basis almost as well as anyone.
Because it is the NFL, we're going to celebrate the quarterbacks and talk about the quarterback play, but there was no player on the field more dominant than Jadeveon Clowney for the Seahawks. I mean, he was everywhere, forcing fumbles, picking up fumbles, making tackles, getting sacks, jumping up in the air and changing plays, tipping balls. He did everything. I mean, he looked amazing last night. What do you think about Jadeveon Clowney?
For some reason, it made me think about MC8 and Menace to Society. I was like, he's a straight-up menace. Gia. I don't know why I was saying that when I was watching the game. Sacks, hits on the quarterback, touchdowns. Remember, he was a terrific collegiate player and went #1. But his signature play, people sleep on who that was against. Michigan. When he bust through the line and he basically knocked the Heineken cap off of our running back. And so then the world started to pay attention to his greatness. And so when you go #1 and you play defensive end, this is what I was saying about the Browns and Myles Garrett, for example. This is the kind of impact you expect that player to have. Yeah. And this is why Seattle trading for him and promising him they're not going to franchise him puts them in a unique situation if they don't come with the money because somebody else will.
Jalen, you mentioned DK Metcalf, and two things I know about you is you like style, you like being fresh. This is three things, and I know you like innovation. I saw something on the field I have never seen before, and it was on DK Metcalf after that crazy play where he fumbled the ball. Look at that eye black. My man has a lightning bolt eye black and the dangling earrings. Jalen Rose, I love this. Do you love this as much as I do?
I like it a lot. I was watching Tua on Saturday. I liked his eye black. It is something that at least the NFL allows the players to show a scintilla of personality outside of uniform. So yes, I enjoyed seeing it.
Hold up. I'm going to do some research and find out if you use the word scintilla appropriately, because I think you might have meant chinchilla when you're talking about fur coats. I'm not really sure. But they're going to tell me in my ear whether or not scintilla is a real word. You used it right, Jalen Rose. Jalen, congratulations. I was wrong, and you are right. I was just a scintilla wrong, though. Moving on. The Mavs and the Celtics played last night, and the Celtics beat the Mavs by a scintilla of points, and this happened as well. Kemba Walker played really well. He had 29 points. Jaylen Brown had 25. Kemba did exit the game with some back issues at the end, but don't look now. The Celtics have not lost since that very first game to the Sixers. Can they keep this streak alive with all the injury problems they have?
I believe they can, and I have one word to describe this Celtics team versus last year's, and you hear a lot of this term when you talk about politics. Economic. That's what reminds me of this team versus last year. Here's what I mean. A guy like Kemba Walker can get you to 20, 25 plus, but he doesn't have to dominate the ball and have as many dribbles. And now all of a sudden, you see that action, right? Throw it to the high post, drive and kick, scissor action, dribble handoff. He likes his little step back where he puts people on skates. And that's the one thing I really like about Kemba. He's really herky-jerky. He's been like that since he was at UConn. Watching that guy play 6 straight games and win the national championship, win the Big East championship, and then win the national championship that year. I actually talked to their team that year and told he and Shabazz Napier that they have what it took to make it to the Final Four after they lost to Louisville and their coach got ejected. So I've been believing in Kemba that long. I'm glad he's back on the East Coast doing work.
We're celebrating Kemba, and there's something to be said for the play of Jason Tatum. Jason Tatum did not have a great night. He was 1 for 18 from the floor. Jalen Rose, I'm sure you were never 1 for 18, but I'm sure there were some nights you wish you played better. What does it feel like to lay an egg on the national stage, and how do you bounce back?
And the only reason why you know that I was never 1 for 18, and I know you very well, that was not a compliment. It's because you researched it and you
I would have found out. Oh,
because you would have loved if I was.
I look up your worst games. I don't look up your best games. You'll talk about your best games to yourself. It's on me to look up your worst games.
Correct. And for Jason Tatum, it all depends on the team outcome. So if you play poorly and the team loses, you feel doubly worse. But when the team wins, you bounce off and you get ready for the next game. And while he still has not had what I would have hoped this opportunity to be an all-star level player type of performances yet this year, let's see if he can get there. But in the team dynamic, they've won 8 straight. And this is the collection of players that I think Brad Stevens is more comfortable coaching more so than what's considered the superstar player in a team dynamic.
It's almost like Tatum's a victim of his own success. Like, he was so good that rookie season, especially in the playoffs, that we're waiting for him to make the leap, to make the leap. But maybe he's just going to have a little bit more of a slow trajectory into stardom than we expected. Moving on, it's time for you to take us behind the curtain. Okay, Jalen, the Spurs are a really well-coached team. So let's just check in on this out-of-bounds play. I'm not sure this is how Pop drew it up right here. So it goes Lyles to Murray. Murray steps out of bounds, and then back to Lyles. Like, Jalen, how does this happen?
This has nothing to do with coaching. It's the same thing that we said with Eric Bledsoe. It's the same, probably taking the same gummies that Deion Waiters have been eating. How about this, Tanner? Can we get him a failed test, please? Because that's what I saw there. That's all I saw. That's all I saw.
Jalen, let me tell you something. Jeremy Roenick told a story about Michael Jordan that I don't think Michael Jordan wanted him to tell, and we'll play it for you. Right? Welcome back to Jalen and Jacoby, live from Pier 17 in the South Street Seaport, and brought to you by delicious Heinekens. Jalen Rose, we've all heard rumors about the prowess of Michael Jordan on and off the court, stories, things that happened, things that might have happened, and Jeremy Roenick sort of broke the code and told a full story about Michael Jordan, and I'm so happy he did. Get ready. Take it away, Jeremy Roenick.
So we played around, beat him for a couple thousand, and I'm getting ready to leave. Now, Bulls are playing that night. They play Cleveland that night. So I'm thinking he's leaving. It's 10 o'clock. He's like, no, let's go play again. So he goes and we fill up a bag full of ice and Coors Light, and we walk again. we roll around another 18. I take him for another couple. And yeah, and now we've been drinking all afternoon. Now he's going from Sunset Ridge to the stadium to play a game, and I'm like messing around. I'm like, I'm gonna call my bookie, and all the money that you just lost to me, I'm putting on Cleveland tonight. He goes, I'll tell you what. He goes, I'll bet you that we win by 20 points and I have more than 40. I'm like, done. Son of a gun goes out, scores 52, and they win by 26 or something after 18 holes of golf. And
36 holes of golf.
36 holes of golf, and having like maybe 10 Bud Lights.
Stop.
The man, Michael Jordan, to me, is probably the best athlete that I've ever seen.
Jalen, there's a lot there. But that story was a little exaggerated. There's been some research done, and he didn't have 52. He had 44. And they won by 24. So Jeremy Roenick still lost the bet. But my question to you is this: how can a human being play 36 holes of golf, drink 10 beers, and then score 44 in the NBA later that night?
Sometime I dream that he is me, like Mike. So let me gather around the campfire, boys and girls. Let me tell you guys something. Greatness exudes itself in a lot of ways. In the legend of Michael Jordan, of course, on the floor, he's the black cat. He's Jesus in gym shoes. He's air. He even played basketball with his tongue out. Just think about it. Played basketball with his tongue out. But you know what made him an actual icon? That he ain't go to bed at 9 or 10 o'clock at night. And we all knew it. Okay, that's just one story. What about the times that he would be in the casino, okay, win a stogie, win, lose, or draw, and still know he got a game the next day or the same day and come out and do work? And I'm not the person to make any allegations, but the Utah flu game, there's been an urban legend that he was more than sick during that game. That's all I'm going to say about that.
Yeah, you're not saying he wasn't sick, but maybe there were some other elements that he was dealing with as well. So, it's a different era than it is now. I think that players are so much more health conscious. But was this kind of behavior not commonplace, but did it occur from time to time in the 90s and the early 2000s?
I always give the modern day athlete credit for something. We worked out. That means you pick and choose when you do it. That means sometimes you have an off season. These guys train. It's 24/7, 365. And that's not just in the gym. It's nutrition. It's a lot of other things that come with trying to make sure that they maximize their ability to be successful on the floor. But don't think that that took away from the greatness of Michael Jordan. There were certain players that wouldn't be effective if they went to bed before midnight. I remember times in my career I was trying to figure it out. Like, I went to bed at 10, that was awful. I went to bed at 3, yeah, I like that. So I wasn't a great player, so I was trying to figure it out for 13 years. MJ knew who he was from the beginning. Allen Iverson, you think he was going to bed at 10 o'clock at night? He's
No, I think he was going to bed at
NBA.
10. He was going to bed at 10, just 10 in the morning. That's when he's going to bed.
Hey, man, let me tell you something. The beauty about the league then, too, is you'll fly into a town and your name will be on a flyer that you ain't even know about. You're like, hosted by such and such and such and such from the NBA team. And you like, cool. Got some built-in action. You know what I'm saying? All I gotta do is go shake hands and kiss babies, and they gonna give me a bottle? Nowadays, you tweet, hey, what's going on? Chicago, I'm gonna be in town. Tell me where the great restaurants. Then it was just a different way to have fun and champagne and campaign. Those are beautiful days in the NBA.
So you said earlier that you were trying to figure out your prime conditioning, what time to go to bed, how hard to champagne and campaign. When you knew you were going to have to defend Michael Jordan or play against Michael Jordan, did you treat those games differently?
When he was with the Bulls, yeah. When he was with the Wizards, no. Because earlier in my career, you got to think about it. The first couple of years I was in the league, the only people that was winning championships was Hakeem and MJ, period. Mm-hmm. That's it. And so Hakeem won 2 and MJ won 3. That's the first 5 years of my career. And when we got a chance to play against them in the playoffs, that year, they won 7 games. We won 6. So we weren't far off. And for us to have a double-digit lead in the second quarter, and then Mike and Scotty and Rodman started to lock down and take the ball from us, oh man, the night before, I was in bed at 11, no question. Room service at 9, trying to be a student of the game. But you gotta pay homage to the all-time great. Because if he had the exposure to information that these players have, he would still champagne and campaign because he enjoys life, and he would average 45 in today's game. Book it, 45. If James Harden averages 37, 38, Michael Jordan would average 45.
So, Jalen, a lot of the stories about Michael Jordan off the court involve some wagers. And I've heard a lot about NBA players and the different wagers they make. Charles Barkley told a story where he had to get out of the way because Michael Jordan was going to take a $300,000 putt. What is the most you have ever wagered on something silly with your teammates or another NBA player?
Bet on everything. Like, in the NBA locker room, you bet on anything. On the plane, you bet on anything. You playing games, you playing in between, you playing boo-ray, you playing poker, shooting craps. Like, anything. Because you're in a competitive environment with millionaires that whoever wins or loses a bet can actually pay the bet. So that becomes the competition. So I do recall multiple times where I lost bets, but I can't front and don't want to put any names out there. But I was on the winning side of a lot of bets that I had to find ways to make sure I got paid for.
You still have some accounts receivable out there?
Yeah, oh definitely. I got some accounts receivable. I got some receipts. for sure. I got some
Jalen.
ESPN receipts, too.
Jalen, James Harden did something that has not been done in 50 years. I'll tell you exactly what that is right after. NBA action Wednesday night. Kawhi and the Clippers take on the Beard and the Rockets. That's at 7:30 on ESPN. And then we have the Warriors and the Lakers at 10 o'clock on ESPN. And that's on Wednesday. Don't forget tonight, big game between Oregon and Memphis. That's at 9 p.m. Will James Wiseman play? Tune into ESPN and find out.
Here we go,
Welcome back to Jalen and Jacoby. Jalen, do you remember that really bad loss the Rockets had a little while ago when they were in Miami? Well, guess what? Things have changed since then. They won 4 straight last night, beating the Pelicans. Russell Westbrook contributed 26 points, and James Harden went off. Harden is averaging 37.3 points a game, Jalen. That is the most through 10 games from anyone in 50 seasons. What do you think James Harden averaging 37.3? What do you think about it?
Making the lefties proud and adding shots to his repertoire. That half step back that he's added to his jump shot from 3-point range while contested, it seems like a bad shot, but it is lethal. And he's knocking it down. And earlier in the year, he would struggle from 3-point range, in particular when he was contested. But what makes him such a great scorer, it's gonna go in regardless of the contest. It's like when somebody shoots it, people say, like it had eyes. It's just a matter of time before he get it going. And the beauty of his offensive game has now forced people to play him out so far that he can dribble drive, and now he's getting Capella a couple of more opportunities.
Yep.
Getting PJ Tucker a couple of more opportunities, Gordon, and then when he's not in the game, that's Russell's chance to go in transition, 100 miles an hour and break down the defense, pull up from mid-range and finish at the hoop. So offensively, they're trying to put it together, but a Mike D'Antoni coach team, the question is always gonna be where and if they're gonna have a commitment defensively.
I mean, that's the thing. I mean, this team is 21st in the league in defensive efficiency. How far can they go before they have to pick that up?
Well, they have 2 guys that just recently won the MVP award. So they have the opportunity clearly to take over a quarter, take over a half, take over a game, take over a series individually, let alone together. So they are always going to be in a game. They always have a puncher's chance, whether it's the Clippers, whether it's the Lakers, whether it's Denver, whether it's the Jazz. They'll be in the game if both of those guys get going. But when you can't get stops, you know what ends up happening. Now that distorts your balance. You always taking the ball out of the net. And when you're taking the ball out of the net and you're going against a set defense, your percentages drop. In particular, Russell Westbrook, because he's playing against 5 set people looking at him versus broken floor situations.
Yeah, Westbrook was 1 for 8 from 3. Harden was 3 for 11. Not great efficiency, 4 for 19 combined. Do they need to pick that up?
Yes. And I know the analytics tell you that if you're in the top 5 in 3-point attempts, that you could be in the lower third of percentage. But when you don't defend, that means your shots are gonna be more contested. And I'm never a fan of high volume misses. I don't care where they come from. These players are too athletic. These coaches are too smart. We know where you're gonna be, so that makes you easier to defend. Now, while I applaud the way they're able, especially James, to make contested shots, if I know you're not playing mid-range, I'm contesting at the 3, I'm contesting at the hoop. And if you're not gonna take the mid-range shot, it's gonna lower your percentages. So I agree with you. If it's 4 for 19, you usually lose that game. Now, if you're a 13 for 19, then you're up 10 or 15 points on the scoreboard.
Yep, well, high volume, high percentage 3-point shooter, a gentleman by the name of Steph Curry. His Warriors lost to the Jazz last night. Obviously, he was out, and he said this about potentially coming back.
I definitely expect to be ready to play. I don't know when, but at some point in early spring. It's just the a matter of the rehab process. I've never obviously broken anything and dealt with a hand injury like this, and so, you know, as you go through all the examinations and all that type of stuff, and when surgery was required for this to even have a chance to heal properly, that's a tough blow. But understanding there's a time frame where we can measure the rehab process and then figure out what the rest of the year looks like. You know, I'm excited about the potential that the rest of the season isn't lost.
If there's one person whose butt in the NBA I don't want to fall on me, Aaron Baines is like top 10, and it just shattered his hand. You can tell that it really hurt from that. So, Jalen, you had a hand injury. If we get to a point where it's late February, early March, and the Warriors aren't even sniffing the playoffs, do you bring Steph back just to try to get him back into basketball shape anyway?
Well, this is tricky because now without your best player and without his splash brother teammate, Draymond Green has been dealing with some injury issues. Now you have a mix of players led by D'Angelo Russell, who scored 30-plus points in 4 straight games, that are really trying to figure if they're part of the team's future. It's really hard to determine that if they never compete with the best players during live action. So at some point when he's healthy, you have to put him out there to play with those guys to see which ones you want to bring back or not. Now, for Steph and his hand surgery, I heard something that's really interesting, and it's probably an advancement of medicine that I missed. As somebody, as you alluded to, that has a plate and 5 screws currently in his hand, I heard him say that they're going to do a second surgery to remove the pins. Now, what does that mean? That means he's not a 46-year-old man with pins in his hand. Therefore, a medical miracle for me to put on boxing gloves and train and hit the bag and do things that I love without having a sore hand versus fully recovering like he's gonna probably do, which is taking him to the spring. And now all of a sudden, he won't have to come back like I did and play with a version of a Michael Jackson glove that had a cast on top of it that literally became a target for the opponents. And I was doing this on a team that went to the lottery. So that just shows you how the approach for the players were probably different, but also this information and the medicine that is afforded to him allows him to completely heal and not have a lingering injury like I do.
Well, the NBA and the players' approach to games has changed a lot since you played in the league, not just the hand surgeries, and now we use the term load management. LeBron James said something really interesting about the wear and tear on AAU players. Here's what LeBron James had to say about the AAU experience for young athletes. He said, quote, "These kids are going into the league already banged up, and I think parents and coaches need to know that. AAU coaches couldn't give a damn about a kid and what his body is going through. It was a few tournaments where my kids, Bronny and Bryce, had 5 games in one day, and that's just too bleeping out of control. That's just too much." Jalen Rose, do you think that young athletes should start considering load management or wear and tear in their bodies in their teens?
So first and foremost, and I've been a champion for this, there are a lot of people that slander AAU basketball. I'm going to defend it and continue to do so because a lot of those people actually participated and became success stories. For those that don't know, in a lot of cases, most cases, AAU coaches barely get paid in order to coach your kids and deal with the immaturity sometimes that comes with coaching young athletes and the hostility that comes with coaching athletes whose parents want them to always be the star. So I am not gonna be somebody in any way, shape, or form that slanders AAU basketball. As a young athlete, high school, I wanted to play all day. Just like when you go to the park, Jacoby, let me ask you a question. How many games do you want to run when you go to the park?
Oh, I want to run 10, but I only try like the first 5. You know what I mean? Like first 5, I go hard, and then I just coast for the last 5. That's how I do but they're much shorter than actual games. Do you think 5 competitive games is too much for a 16-year-old in one day?
I believe 5 is excessive. I have participated myself in a handful of games during weekends, but let me tell you why that scheduling also works out this way. Usually these young people have school during the week or activities, or the adults have to work, and or the coaches of your AAU teams have second and third jobs. See, we only look at it from a lens of if you get a chance to coach an All-American. So yeah, you got a shoe deal. Yes, you have an access to a gym and all of these other things, but that's only a small percentage. The majority of the time, you're trying to get as much out of these young people as possible while they're in your presence. And usually the opportunity to do that is on the weekend. Just like when you go play rec ball, it's on the weekends more so as you're a young person because you can play all day. And for you, if you want to play 5 games as a young person, I want to play as many games as possible. So I'm not going to go into the load management word for young players, but I do believe 5 games is excessive. I don't think, however, that 3 games are excessive. And also, let me point something else out to you that happens that I actually never was a fan of. I hate running time. I hate running time. It's running time. I hate running time. I hate running time. So that's something to consider as well.
Anthony Davis said something about his health that might be of concern for Lakers fans. We'll tell you what that is right after. Jalen, we always say we don't force topics on this show, so we have a block specially tailored to your needs. If you want to discuss a topic, you can choose whether or not you'd like to. This segment is called Keep It Moving. If you want to stop on the topic, say hit the brakes. If not, we jump in the minivan and keep it moving with Method Man. Are you ready, Mr. Rose?
You mean this show isn't contractually obligated to troll the Dallas Cowboys on a daily basis? Let's get it.
Maybe we will in this segment. We'll see. Are you ready?
Yes, indeed.
Kawhi Leonard played against his former team he just won a championship with last night. Keep it moving or hit the brakes.
Hit the brakes.
The Clippers did get the win against the Raptors, but Kawhi Leonard didn't play great. He scored 12 points on 2 for 11 from the field. Do you think he wanted to show out for his former teammates?
You absolutely want to show out against your former teammates. And watching this game was a perfect example of where Paul George's value was going to be so very paramount. Because the Raptors have a bunch of long and athletic wings, Powell and Pascal, that can do a lot of switching and keep the ball in front of them. I really like the way Van Vliet has been playing as well. And so now all of a sudden, he not only has to score the basketball and get rebounds, but he has to be the primary ball handler all of the time. And you showed the 9 assists. What you didn't show was the 9 turnovers. So that is something that, as a playmaker, and he is one of the great players in the game, clearly, that Doc Rivers and his staff is continuing to try to work with him on.
Next, Anthony Davis had an update in his health that's a little concerning. Keep it moving or hit the brakes.
Hit the brakes.
Well, he said that he's been playing with a shoulder injury. He's been playing through it, but they're headed in the right direction. Do you think this will be a lingering problem as the season progresses?
Well, the one thing about playing basketball, you do a lot of reaching, you do a lot of grappling, you do a lot of shooting and dunking and falling and bracing for your fall. Your shoulders are so very important. Paul George out 2 off-season shoulder surgeries. Hopefully he'll be back playing soon. Anthony Davis has been a player that's dealt with some nicks and bruises his entire career. I see this as something that days we're gonna look up and he's missing games, and shoulder's gonna be the reason.
Well, hopefully that's not the case for the Lakers. Jalen, I have some good news for the Pistons. Keep it moving or hit the brakes.
Hit the brakes.
You were at the game to see Blake Griffin come back and play basketball. He had 19, 7, and 6, had a really nice behind-the-back assist, too. Oh, look at that one, cutting to the hole. Kennard scores. Jalen, that's the good news. The bad news is they're still 4-7 and don't look very good. What do you think from the Pistons?
So, first off, I got to pay homage to the opponent. Karl Anthony Towns has done something that I hope would happen earlier in his career. He got a mean and nasty streak now. He always had the skill. He can always shoot the three. He can always play on the post. But he out there with a frown on his face now. And I appreciated that anger that he participated in that game with and how he's been playing all year. And shout to Andrew Wiggins, who also scored over 30 and was unguardable and was getting buckets. Now for the Pistons, here's the positive, Jacoby. You have a team that has multiple players that can initiate offense now.
Yep.
Derrick Rose, Luke Kennard, Blake Griffin, and also Andre Drummond has really good ball skills at the high post on dribble handoff actions. Don't sleep on the Pistons as they are starting to get healthy, start to make a run in the Eastern Conference.
Well, speaking of health, I have some injury updates that aren't good news for a couple franchises. Keep it moving or hit the brakes.
I would say keep it moving for now.
We keep it
We'll
moving.
keep moving.
We keep it moving.
There is a fan petition to fire a head coach in the NFL. Keep it moving or hit the brakes.
Oh, you know I am not about to troll, force, or chase cowboy topics in any way, shape, or form. We're a talent-driven show, not a topic-driven show. Keep it moving.
We keep it moving. We keep it moving.
The Washington football team has named its starting quarterback for the rest of
Keep
the
it moving.
season. Okay, we'll keep it moving.
We keep it moving. We keep it moving.
Kentucky Wildcats have been named number 1 in the men's basketball AP poll. Keep it moving or hit the brakes.
Calipari still there, Coach?
Yes, sir.
Hit the brakes.
We'll hit the brakes. The Kentucky team, of course, Calipari's strategy is to stack it with freshmen. And I have a question. What is it like being on a highly rated, hyped freshman basketball team in college?
So the game has changed. When I played and was fortunate enough to be a member of the Fab Five, we were 5 freshmen starting, but the teams that we were going against were junior and senior laden. You go to Indiana, when we went to Ohio State, these were more mature teams. Now in today's landscape, all of the top players are young because usually those players end up being 1 and or 2 and done type prospects. So for them, it's playing against their peers, really. These are the same guys they was competing against in the McDonald's game, competing against in the AAU circuit, that type of thing. So I think they'll have a level of confidence, and it's great to see Cal, who was the usher and owned the 1 and done from the beginning, now at the number 1 spot.
I have a story from another highly touted freshman class, Memphis, that you forced us to put in the show. Keep it moving or hit the brakes.
Hit the brakes, please, immediately.
Memphis freshman Lester Quinones has generated a little buzz for doing something that was the opposite of what you did in college. Check those out.
Come on, dog. Come on, man. Come on, man. He's wearing Isaiah and John Stockton shorts. And you know what else I noticed? His shorts were so tight, he was missing all of his shots. Watch this layup. If his shorts was bigger, he would have made this. I promise you, if his shorts was larger, he would have made that last layup. But you fall on the ground with all of these cameras, it becomes porn. People shooting up your shorts, doing all of that stuff. You see how tight he kept his legs, Jacoby? When he did that layup, you saw that?
Jalen, they're so short. Like, I think he took him to like the dry cleaner and was like, yo, can you shorten these up for me? Like, I'm sure Anthony
Show
Hardaway
him
saw him
again.
and was like,
Please
dog,
show
you can wear
those
him
again.
short. Like, you can wear him
Please.
short, but you
Show-
can't
let
wear
me
him
show the world
that
what not to
short.
do.
You can wear him short, but you cannot wear him that short. You can't roll him up from the bottom. You can roll him down from the top. See him roll him up right there? You can't be rolling him up mid-game like that. Come on, Lester. I'm rooting for you, Lester. Dog, I promise, when you play Oregon tonight, you got some bigger shorts, you're going to get bigger buckets.
Watch
That's just the way
this
it works.
layup, Jacoby.
He
Shorts
can't
too
move his
tight.
legs.
Look,
Can't move his
couldn't
legs.
even. Right. you see what I'm saying? He couldn't even flex, right?
Jalen, I've got the secret to the Lions turning the franchise around. Not the season, the franchise. I'll show you what that is right after this. is finally here. Today's the day you can download the Disney Plus app right now and start streaming the best of Disney, Pixar, Marvel, Star Wars, and National Geographic ad-free and wherever and whenever you want them. For more, go to DisneyPlus.com. Welcome back to Jalen and Jacoby. Jalen, Saquon Barkley and the Giants are not having the best season, but head coach Pat Shurmur says they absolutely will not shut down Saquon Barkley. Jalen, I feel like they should start considering this sooner than later.
So I want to rewind you to a conversation we had in early September.
Okay.
Where your brother had the #1 overall pick in fantasy. And I told you I should take Christian McCaffrey. I said I should take Christian McCaffrey. I definitely should take Christian McCaffrey. And you was like, why? I said because the Giants are going to have a bad record, and then later in the season, they're going to decide whether they want to lessen his load or his carries or not. And you know what I did?
Yep.
Because I'm married to a Giants fan, and you're a diehard, die-easy New Yorker.
Yo, don't put me in this. Don't put me in this. You can blame Molly, but you cannot blame me. We got to move on to your team, Jalen Rose. I'm going to show you how the Lions franchise can turn themselves around and win playoff games and be successful forever. Take a look at this. This is an Argentinian soccer team. They opened the new stadium, and they have a hologram of a lion. Look at this thing. Jalen, imagine you had this in Detroit. How hype would the fans be? This is what you need. Not a running back, not a new quarterback, not a new receiver, not a linebacker, not a D tackle, not a secondary, not a new head coach. If the Lions had the lion hologram, would they start winning playoff games?
All I know is when I heard a Tupac hologram was somewhere, I went. When I heard an Eazy-E hologram was somewhere, I went. If the Lions able to adopt that hologram, I would be so very enthusiastic. I might not miss a game.
Can you imagine that? You could put it in that Detroit blue, and the thing jumps down on the field and stands up and starts fighting and stuff. Honestly, I'd be shook if I was there. First time I saw it, I'd be shook. I'd be shook.
But that's also the old cat. I like the old cat better than the new cat on the logo.
We'll be back tomorrow, ESPN 2 at 2. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast.
Too kind.
Got to give the